Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our budget hearing and Meet the Candidates tonight. My name is Tim Terranova, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District. And next to me is Miss Christine Griffin, our assistant superintendent for business. Christine and I will give the presentation in the next few minutes. It'll take about 15 to 20 minutes, and then afterwards we're going to turn it over to our amazing PTSA, who is sponsoring the Meet the Candidates night. And a huge thank you to our PTSA for doing this, but not just this, they do so many things for our district. For example, this week and through the next couple months, they're doing teacher and staff appreciation luncheons across all 5 buildings. And I know our staff greatly appreciates it. That's just one small thing that our PTSA does to support our families and our students. So big thank you to the Victor PTSA. So without further ado, we're going to start our budget hearing. In tonight's hearing, we're going to talk about the goals of the budget. Then we're going to get into specifics around the revenue and expenditure recommendations and talk a little bit more about the general numbers, and then review the budget calendar between now and the budget vote on May 20th. In terms of goals for the 25-26 budget, these really haven't changed in the last 2 years because they're really 30,000-foot goals in terms of our vision and what we're trying to do. First is we definitely need to maintain a comprehensive, exceptional education that the Victor community expects out of their school district. Secondly, we need to really make sure to do that we align our resources to our most important areas that we need to focus on, which is driven by our mission and our vision, as well as our strategic plan. And these are all entities and things that are critically important to helping us drive towards our goals and, again, what is most critical in terms of learning for our kids. In order to do that, we have to have a strategy in our budgetary process that works in this district. That means we need to at least maintain a stabilization of our reserves. It also means we need to maximize every single dollar and try to do as much of our expenditures to have aided attached to it so that you end up with further revenue in future years. So that concept of paying for things through things like BOCES and other ways to generate aid in future years, which then causes us to really be financially stable over time in some really difficult financial times. That allows us to maintain the stabilization of reserves and, as I stated at the beginning, really stay focused on the most important things that are tied to our mission, vision, and strategic plan. And last but certainly not least, a main goal around being transparent to the community so that we answer every question and are clear about our goals and what we're trying to do. Actually, I'm going to flick back here for a second. In terms of kind of maintaining that comprehensive education, I do want to tell a quick story about the Victor Central School District. Since the 90s, we have had significant enrollment increases all the way up to approximately 2013. And so during that time, however, we did not, as a district, receive significant increases in aid. And so some years we didn't receive any increases in aid, and some years we received small percentages of aid increases. Since 2013, we've had a stabilization of our enrollment. So we basically stayed the same in terms of our enrollment. We go up a little bit one year, maybe down a little bit another year, but between 2013 and 2024-25, we've maintained that enrollment. But because we lost so much state aid opportunity between the 90s and, say, 2021, we were definitely struggling as a district to maintain staffing to meet those enrollment demands. So thanks to Christine, she created this chart, which includes in blue the state aid increases since 2007, and then the gold line is our enrollment. And you'll see the big gap between 2007 and 2022, really, 2021, in terms of aid in relation to the significant enrollment increases. That put our district in significant peril in terms of its staffing. We were one of the lowest staffed districts in terms of staffing to student ratios in New York State. I think we were at 1.3 lowest in the entire state. And so what happened, though, that was positive. This community came out in force in 2020, and we were able to exceed the tax cap as well as in 2016 to stabilize our tax revenue. And then just as important, if not more important, you can see the trend of state aid increasing significantly between 2021 and 2024, which then allowed us to increase our staff during that time to have a much better ratio of staffing to students to support our kids and the comprehensive education that we deserve and we need in this district. Up until 2024, that was great. Now, since then, between 2024 and 2025, which is this year, we actually had a 0% increase in state aid. So we're back at that questionable level of state aid, and are we going to get the increases we need? At this moment, in this time, we still don't know what our state budget is for next year. So we have gotten back into this idea of we're not getting significant increases in aid. We're going to hopefully get some increase next year. But now our goal is certainly not to add more staff at this point, because we did do that between 21 and 24. Now our goal is to maintain that staff through a financially strategic way that ultimately preserves our staff and our positions over many years. So that's kind of a brief history of our enrollment versus aid in terms of the Victor Central School District, and we want to make sure that's clear, and thanks to Christine for that graph. So what does that mean? We're not increasing staff for next year, nor are there any reductions in programming. That's huge. That's important. We're not cutting programming. We are maintaining class sizes just like this year because we believe those are critically important. And what we've tried to do is when we needed to add positions within certain areas of our budget, we've tried to find efficiencies in other places that doesn't affect programming or staff. For example, we have some increases that we need because of enrollment and grade level class sizes in some of our older grades, both at the upper elementary and potentially at the secondary level. We also need to have some what we call bubble positions available in case we need more staffing for special ed. At the same time, we have a decrease in enrollment in second and third grade next year. So we can reduce some sections in second and third grade, or a section in each, and ultimately then shift those sections to a different place in our budget. We're not changing the class sizes in second and third grade for next year because we're able to do it because there's decreasing enrollment in those grade levels. And so we're finding efficiencies, but also meeting the needs in other areas. And we were able to do that thanks to the leadership of our cabinet and really our leadership staff and their work with the teacher leaders, so that we basically are not having to increase staff in totality, but in certain places increasing it and certain places decreasing it. I'm going to turn it over now to Christine, who's going to get more specific with the expenditures.
Thank you. So looking at our expenditures for the 25-26 school year, overall, our budget for next year will be $109,771,405, which is an increase of $6.5 million from the prior year, or 6.34%. As in any school district, the biggest portion of our budget is our staffing, and our staffing costs between professional salaries and support salaries and fringe benefits is about 76% of our budget. That's going up in total, $3.3 million to $83.4 million, which is a 4.2% increase. Now, despite what we just said about not increasing staffing, that area still goes up based on contractual obligations with our collective bargaining agreements, and also benefit costs, as you all hear, that our health insurance rates are increasing at a very high rate. So that's what's driving that up. Secondly, I want to point out to you our BOCES aid is a significant jump from prior years, and what's really driving that is taking a look at our historical actual trends in spending and really aligning our budgets with that. That line has been growing over the years due to increased use of BOCES services, which is a wise investment because we do get BOCES aid back on that in the subsequent year. But really, the portions of that are growing the most is our use of the technology and also our special needs students using that services. So The next highest portion of our budget is our debt service. That's about 6.75% of the total budget. It's not increasing a significant amount, but I wanted to point that out because it is a large portion of our expenditures. That is for our debt payments for our prior capital projects and also for our transportation bans that we do for our buses. Those things are also in the category of expense-driven aid, so we do get aid the next year on those as well. Lastly, another key thing that's growing in the next largest portion of our budget is our contractual line, which is going up $1 million. And the biggest portion of that is about $520,000 of that is for contract transportation due to challenges in our driver shortage. We've had to contract out a lot more of our transportation to an outside contractor. So that's a large portion of that increase. Also, our utilities, everybody's utilities are going up. It's a hot topic right now. So our utilities are increasing, so that's another big portion of that. And our liability insurance has gone up as well. I think, let's see. Oh, transportation aid. On our debt service and that portion of that. When later on, you're going to see a slide where we're replacing our buses. That will be a proposition on the ballot. Those expenses, we ban those out, and those actually, while those payments are in this debt service line, we do get transportation aid on those expenses every year as well. So those categories of the expense-driven aids are things that really we're trying to focus on those expenses so that we can generate aid in future years. This slide kind of speaks for itself. Despite expenses going up 6.34%, you can see that the Victor Central School District per pupil spending continues to be one of the lowest in the lower than the averages of any of the neighboring community districts. Victor Central School District is within the Ontario County average, but we're still about $7,000 to $8,000 less than any of the other districts, the average of our county. Shifting to revenues. So the district has had to adopt a budget despite uncertain state aid numbers. The New York State legislators last week passed a 10th budget extender, which takes the state budget through at least through Wednesday, May 7th. Checking the news channels today, apparently the word is that they're 99.9% there, and hopefully we'll have things done by the end of the day tomorrow. So we'll be watching that very closely. But overall, the adopted revenues and what you'll see, in your budget newsletter, our budget is supported predominantly, about 55% is through property taxes. And our property tax levy we have is going up from $58 million to $60 million for about $1.7 million or 3.04% from prior year. That is tax cap compliant, which means we are at our tax cap. We are not exceeding our tax cap. State sources are the next largest portion of revenue that supports our budget. We're showing about $1 million increase on that, or 2.67%. Again, some of this is estimates. It's based off of the governor's January proposals. We're believing that this will be around the number that we're going to receive next year, but we'll know more final numbers soon. And understand, too, that number still, even after getting the state aid runs in the spring, that number can change in the fall based on expenses that we expend in this year. So, for example, I talked to you about the expense-based aids that generate aid in the following year. Those numbers, once we have those final numbers at June 30th, we will know what that aid will be next year. Fund balance is something new on our budget this year. This is, when your expenses are growing at 6.34% and your aid is growing at 2.67% and your levy is capped at 3.04%, you need to balance your budget, and how we're doing that this year is the use of fund balance. It's not ideal. It's not something we want to do long term, So it will be something that we are looking at going into the future. We'll be looking at our long-range financial plan and finding ways to reduce the use of fund balance in future years.
I'm just sneaking in for one slide. This is a unique slide because it shows Victor's uniqueness as a community. Your budget to budget, our budget to budget is going up to 6.34%. However, our levy is going up 3.04%, which is significantly less than the budget to budget increase, and that's within the tax cap that we have this year. And then because Victor community in terms of housing is growing, as you can see as you drive through Farmington and even areas of Victor, and we are adding more businesses and home growth, not only home growth, but home and business values are increasing. The rate to rate increase is actually less than the levy to levy, which is at its worst, I guess, or I don't know if I want to say worst, at its greatest is 1.79% tax rate to tax rate next year. And every year in the previous few years, that rate increase has actually been less than that. So this is the greatest it's going to be, and most likely it's going to be less, potentially even less than this year's, which happened the last few years. So in Victor, you see budget to budget increase is the greatest increase. The levy is the next greatest, but within the tax cap. And then the lowest increase is the rate to rate increase.
So applying that tax, estimated tax rate, which is our true value tax rate, this is the estimate for different value homes prior to calculating any savings for STAR. So there's STAR exemption or STAR credit, so that obviously is not applied at this point. But this shows what the value, the estimated tax bill would be next year, and the change from prior year. And as you can see, it's going up to 1.79%. Final assessment rolls are not established until June 30th, so we won't know what the exact rate will be for the communities until after that, when the tax rates are set by the board in August. So I want to explain a little bit about true value tax rates just briefly. It's something I could hold a whole class on if you wanted to. But true value tax rates really is what would be the rate if every property and all of the taxing municipalities that are in the Victor Central School District. So that includes 5 townships. Obviously, Victor, Farmington are the largest two, but we do have property also in East Bloomfield, Parrington, and Macedon. So all of those communities, if every one of those communities had assessed their properties at 100% of market value, that would be how we come to that rate. So that's what a true value tax rate is. Your rate on your bill come September may be higher than or lower than this, and you may already see that, thinking in your head what your tax bill was last year, what that rate is. But it all really depends upon the equalization rates that are set by the state and also the assessed values that are set by your town assessors. Either way, the tax levy for the Victor Central School District, regardless of the rates going up, being higher or lower than this, the levy for the school district is still staying the same here at the $60 million that we presented. And if you take a look at the tax rate comparison, comparing to our neighbors, this kind of also speaks to itself as the prior slide did about the per student spending. The true value tax rate compared to the averages of the school districts in the communities surrounding us in the varying counties, Victor Central School District is the lowest in that. So Victor is in the Ontario County average of 15.04%, but you'll also see here that we've been able to provide you with Wayne County and Monroe County. Obviously, for the after vote column here, those numbers for the other counties are still based on prior year because we don't know what the other school districts are doing at this point in time. So regardless, with the increase that we have, we're still the lowest per true value tax rate for the school districts in the area. And lastly, I wanted to just show you a reflection of our tax rate history going back all the way to 2000. As you can see, that tax rate, that true value tax rate has been declining over the years, and the biggest driver of this that Dr. Terranova alluded to earlier as well, is the assessed values in the property. There's been tremendous growth in the Victor area, and that's what's been driving that rate down. More houses moving in, more businesses moving in, and what that means is that our levy has been increasing at a lower pace than the property assessed values in of the properties in the community. The last thing here that I mentioned this earlier, the proposition that will be on the ballot for our bus purchases, so you'll see this every year. We have next year 6 large diesel buses and 2 small gasoline buses. This supports our bus fleet replacement plan, which helps us to transport our students safely to and from school and various activities.
And then the third piece of the ballot will be the Board of Education election. There's 3 open seats, each for 3-year terms. And we have our 3 incumbents as the candidates: Lisa Kostecki, Tim DeLucia, and Elizabeth Mitchell. And we are excited that all 3 have decided to take up the challenge and run again. They're exceptional board members, and I'm looking forward to working with them and the entire board next year and beyond. Important dates coming up. May 6th is today. That's our budget hearing, but coming up in a couple minutes will be the PTSA and PI sponsored Meet the Candidates night. So you'll meet the 3 incumbents who are running again. Tuesday, May 13th is the voter registration day. If you have not registered to vote, you're not a registered voter, and you're able to meet the criteria that is set by the state around that, then please come to district office between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. on May 13th to register. And then, of course, Tuesday, May 20th, that's 2 weeks from tonight, is our budget vote and Board of Ed election in our early childhood school boardroom from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Just a couple other notes. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have had some stabilized enrollment in the past several years. That's great news. We anticipate stable enrollment over the next few years. We were able to significantly increase our revenue through 2021 through 2024 because the state finally gave us, for at least 1 year, the full foundation aid we were supposed to get, despite the fact that we lost over $100 million in the 20 years before that, or 15 years before that. Because of that, we were able to substantially increase our staffing to be at levels that at least are stable and have our staff give our staff the ability to meet the needs of our kids at a greater level than they were 5 and 10 years ago, despite the fact that they worked beyond unbelievable hours and worked to try to get that done. So we have a much more stabilized staffing compared to our enrollment. The big thing is we do have some uncertainty in terms of revenue moving forward. As I said, we did not get an increase in aid this year. We don't know what our increases will be over the next several years. And we need to figure out ways as a Victor Central School District community to come together, especially this summer and the fall, to look at things that are outside the box in terms of ways to find additional revenue, continue to advocate with the state for appropriate state aid, and certainly continue to look for ways to refine our expenses, although still supporting our kids at the highest level. A couple thank yous to the board, first of all, for the advocacy they've given us over the last few months, a tremendous number of meetings with legislators to try to get the word out about the unique nature of Victor Central School District. And certainly we will continue to advocate moving forward with our state officials to make sure that we are receiving the appropriate amount of aid that we need as a district to maintain the programs that we currently have. So a huge thank you to the Board of Education regarding that. And for people that are listening or watch this later, please go to our website at victorschools.org. Kim Dole and Liz Welch have done a great job really refining that website. There's a whole section on the 25-26 budget. It has all the information possible on it. I forgot to mention that this Friday, We are mailing out the budget newsletter, so it should be in homes either over the weekend or early next week. That's packed full of information. Please review that for any questions or any information that you really need about our budget. And do not hesitate to reach out to me as superintendent at terranovat@victorschools.org. If you have any questions, we'll be sure to answer them. We also have a question, and we'll have a question and answer section on our website to make sure that we update questions that we receive from the public. So at this time, are there any questions from the audience regarding the budget presentation? Hearing none, I am now going to turn it over to our amazing PTSA, who will facilitate our Meet the Candidates night.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to invite the candidates to come up to the front and take their places, please. My name is Tara Glynn, and I'm the president of Victor's Parent Teacher Student Association. On behalf of the PTSA, I want to thank Victor Central Schools for providing us with this important forum tonight. While the candidates are getting settled, I'd also like to thank all of you for supporting our community and engaging in this process. In just a few moments, we'll have each candidate introduce themselves, and to help keep the evening running smoothly, we're asking candidates to keep their responses to about 2 minutes per question. We'll also be collecting questions from the audience, so if you have one, just hold up your card and one of our volunteers will come by to collect it. All right, we'll get started. I'll turn it over to the candidates to begin their introductions. Elizabeth, you're up first.
Sure. My name's Elizabeth Mitchell. I'm currently in my 4th year as a Board of Education member. I live in Farmington with my husband Dana. Our 2 children attend Victor Schools. Patrick, our son, is a 5th grader at the intermediate school, and we have a daughter, Emily, at the primary school. I moved to the community about 8 years ago when we built our home, and we chose the community for the school district specifically. I teach in a neighboring school district not far from here, so I live and breathe public education. I'm super grateful to my colleagues for running again. I have immense respect for both Lisa and Tim, as well as my other colleagues who make up our group, and I'm looking forward to answering some questions this evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Kostecki. I'm honored and excited to be here and to run for another term on the Board of Education. My family and I have been in the district for almost 17 years now. My husband, Joe, is a music therapist at the VA, and our daughter is a junior currently, and our son is a freshman. My day job is spent working in higher education publishing, so I've spent my entire career in the education space in some sort. And I'm really excited to be able to continue to collaborate with my colleagues on the board for another term.
Thanks, Lisa. Tim?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim DeLucia. I've been in the district for 39 years and have served on the board for 30. My wife, Marilyn, is a retired school teacher. She once taught at the Victor Central School Districts, ended her career in Hilton. I have 2 children, my oldest son, Michael, and his wife, Celine, and my 2 grandsons currently live in Brooklyn. He graduated last century. My daughter, Erin, also graduated last century. She lives in Queens and has 3 children, she and her husband, Scott. I'm a retired business manager, so my day job now is currently lawn work and naps in the afternoon. I'd say we are fortunate to have community members who care deeply about our children and their schools, and parents who want the best for their sons and daughters. We have dedicated staff, all committed to preparing our students for the future. I want to acknowledge and thank the school community. This community is involved and supportive. This is evidenced by positive support of our budgets, the many donations given by parent groups, individuals, organizations, and businesses, and the many volunteers involved week after week with our students. I've served with many talented and dedicated board members. Our current board is a group of people who are completely focused on what is best for kids. I really admire this board. They do great work. We strive to support the talented VCS staff that does the important work every day in many ways to provide a safe and welcoming environment for students to learn and grow. I've been privileged to be part of this for many years. We are also fortunate to have a devoted, involved, and talented superintendent, Dr. Terranova, who has been a great addition to our team. So thank you for being here and for your support of our district. You are supporting the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll get started with our first question. Thank you for your past service on the Board of Education. Looking ahead, is there an area you've wanted to address but haven't yet had the opportunity to that you hope to focus on in your next term? Lisa, we'll start with you.
Yes, that's a great question. There are several areas, because our work is never done, even when we complete something. I think Dr. Terranova alluded to some of this. The advocacy work that we've been doing needs to continue. We need to ensure that we're getting the right state funding in order to do the work we're doing in this district. So along with my colleagues, I hope that we can continue over the next year to really spend more time with our state legislators explaining what makes Victor different from some of the other schools, and how we can ensure that that funding continues to come in. On top of that, I said this 3 years ago when I was sitting here, I want everyone who walks in this building to feel like they're included, like they belong, and through the work of our Mission and Vision Committee and the things that we are striving now to do, I want to take some more time to really spend ensuring that families want to come to Victor, that they want to be a part of this school district, so that we can continue to grow in the good work we're doing.
Thank you, Lisa. Elizabeth?
I do agree with Lisa. I think the advocacy work needs to continue. I would love to see us start earlier in the year. It's something that board members have talked about in this past cycle, because really, the work is longer than our typical budget cycle starting in January. It's something that we've talked about as a group, and I think an initiative that we're looking to begin really focusing on next year. I also think expanding some special education opportunities, specifically with work-based learning internships. I know that we have some really good partnerships with Unified Sports. I'd love to see something like that transfer into an internship opportunity for students with special needs. So those are two areas that I would like to focus on in the next 3 years.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Tim?
Yeah, a couple that have already been mentioned. Advocating for the appropriate funding, certainly an important focus for us. And as Elizabeth just mentioned, work-based learning is important. Also, we need to focus on making sure we have a safe and welcoming environment for our students to learn and our teachers to teach. And we need to plan for future needs that could include facilities, buildings to keep up with current and future needs. Technology is changing. We must change along with it. Thank you.
Thank you. On that topic of technology, what role do you think technology should play in classroom learning at Victor? I'll start with you, Elizabeth.
I think it's definitely a powerful tool. I don't think anybody would argue that it has so many benefits. It opens up so many opportunities and doors for children to expand what they experience in the four walls of a school. I think teachers have taken so many initiatives to, stay current with technology as it develops. And I know that the district has done a lot to try to increase one-to-one device accessibility, opportunities for staff to take trainings and expand their comfort and execution of using technology in the classroom. I also understand on the flip side, there are times when it can be a distraction. I know that social media, there are some issues with bullying, with children using cell phones or adolescents, and I think it's a really fine line of staying current on what's going on, making sure that we bring in all partners, school resource officers, our director of technology, talking to teachers and staff who are seeing it day to day at all levels on how we can best support them and the students. So I'm definitely not anti-technology by any means. I do realize and understand that there are some concerns around specific areas of technology. I know that there's a big question with the cell phone ban, and there are some people that are really for it with the bell-to-bell, as the governor is proposing in her budget, and there are some people who are really against it. I think as a board, in conjunction with Dr. Terranova and, teachers, staff within the district, our building leaders, we just really need to have a conversation about what that's going to look like for Victor and make it our own.
Thank you. Tim?
Could you repeat the question? I'm not
Yep.
sure I totally heard it.
Yes. What role should technology play in classroom learning at Victor?
Technology play in the classroom? Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Certainly, staff development would be important to make sure that staff is up to date and knowledgeable about the use of technology. We know AI is out there, artificial intelligence, and new to me. I'm not sure I understand it, but thankfully we have a board member by the name of Brian Adams who will help us in that regard. It's part of his business. So we want to make sure that we keep pace with using things like AI as a tool that could be beneficial for teaching, and not make sure it doesn't get in the way of making it less rigorous for students in their learning process. So it's a delicate balance. We'll need to pay attention to that, certainly. As I lived through my career, I started with a computer that you actually had to program to use. So that's how far I've come in terms of the kinds of technology and how it's changed over the years, and it grows exponentially. And certainly I try and keep up with it, but I'm sure that we have the talent here to keep pace with the changes in technology and implement that appropriately.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues, obviously, that technology does need to be utilized for educational benefits, and there are many. And having worked in the higher education space for almost the past 30 years, I've watched us go from textbooks to course materials that are all online through your learning management system, and there is proven engagement with those tools. On top of that, there's stronger collaborations between students and professors utilizing those tools. So obviously, those are the types of things we want to look at for Victor, and AI as well. There's a lot that's happening behind the scenes, allowing students to use AI properly that really helps with that engagement and better learning and writing. And like Elizabeth said, board has to have a lot of discussion. We know how to talk to our teachers. We've got to talk to our superintendent. We're lucky to have a superintendent's leadership group full of 40 students, 30, 40 students, and we want their opinion as well. Why do they want the technology? Why do they not want the technology in school? So we have a lot of opportunities to grow what we're already doing with technology in the right ways for our students.
Thank you. So our next question is, what is your approach to listening and considering different perspectives? Tim, we'll start with you.
Okay, I didn't hear it again.
Yep.
Sorry.
What is your approach to listening and considering different perspectives?
What is my approach to?
Listening and considering different perspectives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, listening is one of the most important aspects of being a board member. I feel as though we have a well-balanced and talented team on this board that contributes in many different ways. So I've learned quite a bit from my colleagues on the board. I do that by listening, understanding what is being presented, and taking the time to consider different points of view and analyzing it. That's my approach, is I will listen and analyze before I react. And that's how I think this team works, and I think it works very well with this team.
All right, thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with Tim. We're lucky enough to have a board that has a lot of different perspectives, and there has not been a time where I don't think we've voted unanimously since I've been on this board. So That goes to show you that we will sit, we will listen, we will discuss to get to a place where we all feel comfortable with what we're about to do. I had an executive coach years ago who taught me something that I have done in my career, I do with the board, I do with my children, called PAR, pause, assess, and then respond. And it's all about listening first and taking in what someone is saying before you come back with a conversation on how you feel about it. And so I continue to do that with this board, with people I meet in the community who have a lot of opinions on what we're doing in Victor, and we'll continue to do that.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth.
I think something that I've tried to do in this capacity within this work is to assume that somebody has the best intentions, even if I don't agree with them. I know that there are people who really want to speak up and have about an issue that's really important to them, and they either write to the board or they come to have a public comment, and while we can't engage in a dialogue with them, I think it's really important that this happens so that as a group, we understand that there are these viewpoints, thoughts, or feelings, whether we share them or not, we are responsible to represent an entire community, not just people who we necessarily agree with on a topic. So I think assuming the best intentions, both with my colleagues on the board and all of our constituents, is incredibly important. And as Tim and Lisa both said, I think seeking to understand somebody's view or perspective is also crucial. I've tried to take a step back and do more listening and thinking about what is the reason behind why they think this, asking them questions to better understand their view. So I think our entire board does a really good job of that, and I think, you know, knowing that if someone's putting themselves out there and voicing a concern or voicing a frustration or voicing something that they think we need to be attentive to, we owe it to them to look into it, and I think our group does a really good job of that.
Thank you. Let's see here. Outside of the initiatives included in the capital project, how do you feel Victor should prioritize funding between academics, arts, and athletics? If you need me to repeat, I will, but we'll start with you, Lisa.
I think that was to you. I think we've done a really good job in Victor of prioritizing these things. I think academics is first and foremost. We want to provide the right academic environment for our students. We want to meet our students where they are, which means we have to provide many different academic opportunities, and that should be the biggest part of our budget planning. Obviously, I can admittedly say I come from a family of the arts, and I have kids who are very involved in our music program, both theater and the Marching Blue Devils, and so I feel very strongly that we need to continue to promote those opportunities as well and ensure that all students can participate in them, which obviously means ensuring that there's funding there available. And I think we've done a great job with our sports program here, and it continues to grow. We've got our first flag football team happening here, which is super exciting. They had their first win yesterday. And so I'd like us to continue to obviously make sure that we're funding each thing properly, but obviously I'm heavily supporting the funding going towards our academic opportunities for our students.
Elizabeth?
I definitely agree that academics should be funded first. And in conjunction with that, I also feel that the co-curriculars, sports, the arts, ensembles, the clubs, that oftentimes is what gets students out the door and motivated to come to school. If they have an experience with a sports team or a musical group or a club that they're just very passionate about, obviously we want to make sure that those things are still funded. But I do believe that academics should come first. That is not to say that our co-curriculars do not hold immense value and motivation for our students. And I also agree with Lisa. We are looking very heavily at opportunity for our students and making sure that kids have those opportunities regardless of, you know, their socioeconomic background or a financial situation that is beyond their control within their family. Looking at pay to play and making sure that kids have the opportunities to participate in the multitude of experiences that our district has to offer them.
Thank you. Tim?
I agree. Academics has to be one of the most important things we need to concentrate on. But if you look at our sports teams, when we recognize our sports teams for their successes, we also talk about their averages, and they're very high. So they go hand in hand with sports and academics, and our coaches understand that they need to pay attention to their academic side as well as performance sports. I too am a father of artists. My son is a sculptor. Professionally, he has his own studio and does his own artwork, and also helps other artists. My daughter's a dancer. She still dances. When she was pregnant for one of my grandchildren, she was dancing, and I was nervous because she was getting close. So I know the importance of arts as well. And what really those three things, you have to understand what motivates your students, what they're interested in, and support them in what their interests are so that they can be successful in their chosen field, whether it's sports, arts, academics, engineering, whatever. So all those elements are important in a school district to make sure that we do give students the purpose for attending and excelling. Thanks.
Thank you. And how do you see the Board of Education supporting Victor in balancing academic rigor with student well-being? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yep. How do you see the Board of Education supporting Victor in balancing academic rigor with student well-being?
Our board is really able to ask for a variety of presentations throughout the year at different board meetings. And I think anybody who follows our board meetings or is able to watch them, if they're not able to watch or attend on the night that they occur, they will see that we ask for a lot of presentations throughout the year. We ask for presentations from Office of Instruction. We ask for presentations from those within the mental health fields within our district, the school psychologists, the social workers, the counselors. We get a variety of updates from Dr. Terranova weekly about all of these topics, and I think, we're really able to see the programming that comes through that, the curriculum council approves and then has to come to the approval for the board, able to see, on our building visits, the rigor that students are experiencing across the continuum of education. And I think, speaking to staff, speaking to those both who focus on more of the academic work and then the mental health piece in conjunction, we get a really good lens on the balance. Our board is very supportive of academic rigor. We're very supportive of getting data and understanding what those numbers mean and what it means for our students and then the next steps. And I think, the mental health piece is something that we continue to focus on as well, because a child can't learn until they feel safe and comfortable and welcome, not only, within the school, but just among their peers and across all settings in their day at Victor.
Thank you. Tim?
I think we learned a lot when we went through COVID on, what types of support we need to engage to help students, not only with their academics, but also with social and emotional support. So we have learned from that. We've put in place the appropriate resources to make sure that our students do have the support that they need, whether it be tutoring if they start to fall behind, social workers that could help with social emotional needs so that our students can succeed. And we can see how many of our students embrace, the rigor of academics. And if it gets to a point where it starts to become troublesome, we have the mechanisms to help those students to get back on track and help them to make sure that they're on pace with what they need to do. So, as I said, I think we learned quite a bit going through COVID, and we, as a board, make sure that we understand what those resources are, how they're engaged, and how they help our students to succeed.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say ditto, but I have to agree with both Elizabeth and Tim on what they said. We did learn a lot coming out of COVID, and we were able to bring in more resources, a substance abuse counselor, social workers in every building, to ensure that our students are well supported as well as our teachers with that academic rigor. And that's always going to continue to be a focus as we move forward. And we know that students need more of those services than ever before. And we want to ensure that they have a safe place and safe space to go every day. And so that is our job, to continue to monitor where they are emotionally with what our expectations of them are academically. And I know that will be a continuing emphasis of this board.
Wonderful. Next question is, what is your view on the role of standardized testing at Victor Central Schools? Tim, we'll start with you.
Standardized testing?
Yep.
I've been counseled on this by my wife, who is a retired teacher. Standardized tests have their place. However, other sources, other types of assessment are important as well. And in this school district, we use both, the standard test, and we do other types of testing to measure how students are performing and how they're growing. So standardized tests have their place. I haven't always personally agreed with them. However, I understand how they're being used, how it can point to areas of need and areas that the district needs to concentrate on. And our teachers and administrators do a very good job analyzing that data to make sure that improvements are made, and we see those improvements in the test scores that are presented to us.
Lisa?
Yeah, as having a current junior who's taking SATs, as a parent, I could say sometimes I am over standardized testing. It is stressful for them, but like Tim, I do realize there is an importance to them. They just can't be the only thing we're using to measure success. And I am very glad with all the presentations that Elizabeth mentioned earlier that we're seeing multiple different ways to examine success of our students. And it is not just the testing that they're taking. It's in many other different activities that they participate in. So it has its place. It's not the only thing. And I agree that we need to continue to monitor and make sure we're getting the best out of it that we can get.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
So I was a third grade teacher in 2011 when Common Core was rolled out, and the chaos of standardized testing and student learning outcomes and all of these things coming from the state were piled on us while we were still unpacking this curriculum. And so standardized testing to penalize or punish a teacher is absolutely unacceptable. And luckily, you know, the state has come a long way and has rolled that back with the annual performance review of teachers. That's no longer the case. So standardized testing has its place, it has its purpose, and the reality is kids are going to have to take tests like these. They need to be comfortable navigating what that experience is like, test-taking strategies, you know, how to read and dissect what it is that's being asked of them and being able to perform to the best of their ability. That being said, as my colleagues have said, you know, that's not the only measure of a student. It's not the only score that matters. And I think our district has done a really good job of looking holistically at the growth of our students, celebrating things beyond test scores. And I understand SATs, crucial, you know, for children preparing for higher ed, that's something that is a must do. And we offer a lot of experiences to prepare our students to take a test such as that. But I think informative assessment, such as you know, end of the year exams or end of unit exams developed by our teachers who are teaching the course or the content, is one of the biggest indicators of our student success. So yes, standardized testing has its place, it has its importance, but it's not the only tool to determine success.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. How can the district better support and retain high-quality teachers and administrators? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
We have a really great mentoring program at Victor. We have several teachers who are masters of their craft, who are supporting our new to Victor teachers, and that could be, you know, a very green novice teacher who's just out of grad school or just out of undergraduate certification, as well as teachers who come from other districts to, you know, begin their career at Victor. So I think mentoring is a wonderful way to support our new teachers. I also think the district has come a very long way in offering professional development for all of our teachers. There are professional learning communities that staff and teachers participate in, several book studies, tons of projects over the summer. You know, I know that in probably August or September, we'll get an update on all of the work that our staff puts into during the summer months to refine curriculum, refine units, and, you know, expand what our kids are already working on. So I think supporting our teachers with continued professional development wherever they are in their career is absolutely crucial. That helps a teacher feel that they're being invested in and that they matter and that they will want to stay. I also think the surveys that VTA and the district send out, you know, throughout the year to see how the staff is feeling at different points, you know, at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and really looking at that data and understanding, you know, yes, we're thrilled that, you know, this percentage of teachers feel really good about this year, feel really good about what they're doing, but there is a percentage that might not feel as, you know, satisfied, supported, comfortable with their position. Why is that? And not feeling that just because we have a larger percentage of staff that feels good, we really need to still focus in on those folks who might not, you know, be feeling too hot, and support them so that they can feel better about their situation, about their job, about whatever their assignment is. And I also think something that I've never seen that Dr. Terranova does, which is incredible, is he has several opportunities throughout the spring to sit with different grade levels, different departments, and hear directly from teachers and staff what's going well, what are things that we need to have on our radar for next year to better support you. And I think when they, when a group of staff feel that the people who are, you know, overseeing their work are that invested and want to hear, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think that helps people feel that what they say matters and that they really could impact decisions in subsequent months or down the road in the following school year.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I very much agree with Elizabeth. Our mentoring program is great. Our professional development opportunities are also strong, but I absolutely agree the single most important thing we can do is get feedback from our staff. And Dr. Terranova has done a great job of doing that. It gives their words value. Because we can make actionable changes based on what we hear from them. We get that opportunity when we tour the buildings as well. We talk to the teachers, we talk to the students, and those opportunities for feedback give us the chance to go back, look at what we're doing with our budget, look at what we're doing with opportunities that we're approving, curriculum that we're approving. And so I think that feedback mechanism has to continue. And I'm very grateful that Dr. Terranova has given our staff the opportunity to speak with him and share their feelings, the good, bad, the ugly.
Thank you. Tim?
Okay, without repeating everything I just heard, it really starts with our administrators, teachers, and staff working together to find the best of the best. They, as teams, they will interview potential candidates for positions. They do an excellent job at screening to bring in the best people for the jobs. So that's the first step, and that's what brings them in the door. And then subsequent to that, there is the mentoring program. There is the professional development that's offered. And there's also obviously the teacher evaluations with feedback that gives teachers the opportunity to understand how they can grow and how they can do better and meet the needs of the position. And then, of course, the informal discussions that take place, not only with our superintendent, but with administrators and teachers. That's all helpful. It's that circle of support that really helps to make sure our teachers are performing at the highest level.
Our next question is, what does meaningful parent and community involvement look like to you? Tim, we'll start with you.
Okay, again, I'm having trouble.
I'm sorry. What does meaningful parent and community involvement look like to you?
Community involvement? Well, as I said in my statement, we have a supportive community. I mean, you folks are a good example of that. We are fortunate to have community members that care enough about this district to show up, to volunteer, to help with many things that are happening in the district, and, you know, the many donations we see that come across our paper when we have meetings. It's astonishing how much support there is for this district. Back in the mid and late 90s, we, you know, had some difficult times when budgets weren't passed. You know, we were struggling to help the community understand the value of the district and what it offers for our students, and we're way past that. I mean, we do have a very supportive community. They're engaged, helpful, and understand the purpose that we have here as a district to offer opportunities for our children.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
In addition to what Tim said, you know, I know that there are so many companies and employers who partner with Sue Utz for work-based learning to give our secondary students these incredible internship opportunities that, you know, isn't happening in every district around. I mean, just looking at the opportunities that our kids have in work-based learning, it shows that our community is really investing in our kids and helping them, you know, discover a passion or a future job career, which is incredible. Also parent groups like PTSA and PI, I know you guys are like workhorses, and I see tons of events, tons of circulation of, you know, guest speakers and opportunities for kids, which I think is so crucial, and I often feel that you guys are the unsung heroes of the district with the work that you do. The donations that come in, both through community groups, youth sports, different boosters, I think our community really rallies around this district. I think it's evident when you go into different stores around the community and see all the Victor Blue Devils wear that you can buy. I think the district's a real point of pride for the larger Victor Farmington community, and we're really fortunate to have such strong support.
Thank you. Lisa?
I'm going to agree again with my colleagues. I've said before that my belief is public schools are the backbone of any community, and I think that is so true in Victor because of meaningful parent and community involvement. Whether it's work-based learning, our PTSA, our boosters programs, just direct contact with our superintendent. I mean, his email is up there. He just gave it to you again to reach out to him and talk to him. So we're giving this community many different ways in which to be involved that work best for them in the time that they can give. And we see that they come out all the time. Like Mr. DeLucia said, we have a very active and engaged community. They show up to votes. They participate in conversation with us. And so we just need to keep continuing doing what we're doing and ensuring that we give them that space to be involved with us.
Thank you. Our next question, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Victor Central Schools today, and what steps would you recommend taking to tackle those challenges? Lisa, I'll start with you.
Well, I hate to go back to state funding, but that is one of the biggest challenges that our district faces. As we saw from that graph, which was incredible that Christine put together tonight, we need that funding to ensure that we can continue doing the work we're doing. And that is one of our biggest challenges, is to make sure our legislators and our governor understand how we are different than several other communities, how much growth we had at one point, yet didn't have the funding and the teaching and the staffing to meet that growth. And so that challenge is going to continue, unfortunately, for a while. And I believe this board, through the work we did last year and will now get to continue to do together, are going to help us meet that challenge. But it is definitely the biggest piece I feel facing us is funding and ensuring that we get all that we need to continue to do what we are doing in this district.
Tim?
I agree. The biggest challenge has got to be funding, stabilizing our budgets, You know, I've lived through many phases of funding when the state aid formula was frozen, when our district was still growing. So we did not receive state aid for the number of students that were enrolled in Victor. So that's where, you know, when you heard Dr. Terranova talk about the millions of dollars we lost, you know, that was one aspect of that. We also lived through the gap elimination, which was a funny equation where they would give you money and then take some back to make sure that the state budget was balanced. And that, you know, to me, that was kind of crazy. And then there's the issue of enrollment. You know, I also sit on the planning board in Farmington, and I see the number of housing starts in Farmington alone. That doesn't include the other municipalities that are part of this district. And I don't understand how our enrollment is flat right now, because the number of new houses that are going in, and when I drive around, I see toys in the driveway. So I know the kids are out there. And I think that we need to pay close attention to what enrollment can be, potentially can be, and then that relates not only to funding, but also to facilities. Do we have enough space to, you know, adequately serve our enrollment population? So those are the things that I wake up screaming about in the middle of the night.
Elizabeth?
Funding, hands down, biggest challenge that we have. I think, you know, we're very engaged with our legislative representatives. We've made some other connections within the governor's office and some senators who don't necessarily serve and represent our specific district, but, you know, have connections within the educational portion of the state Senate. So I think that funding and staying on it and bringing the data and talking about the uniqueness, as Dr. Terranova mentioned in the budget presentation, the uniqueness that we've faced as a district. We have to continue doing that, and I know that, you know, our board is very engaged and ready to continue that work. I also think Tim touched a little bit on this, the space. You know, creatively using our buildings while we're in the midst of a capital improvement project that's going to give us, you know, a lot more space, but that space isn't here yet, and it won't be here for a couple more years. And, you know, getting really creative with using some space in some of our buildings where, you know, we're feeling kind of on top of each other, and supporting, you know, both the kids and the staff who are in those specific environments as well is something that needs to be a continued focus.
Lisa?
I went first.
Oh, you already went first. Did we all go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. So our next question is, and actually there's two questions that kind of go hand in hand, so I'll make it more of a two-part question, I guess. What is one change that you'd like to see at Victor Central Schools within the next 3 to 5 years? And how would you approach the long-term planning for the district? Lisa, we'll start with you.
Oh, gosh. Well, I definitely think the one change I'd like to see in the next 3 to 5 years is our space. And we do have this capital project coming, but as Elizabeth talked about, there are areas we are on top of each other, and it's not the most conducive learning environment. And so I definitely want to ensure that we are focusing on the areas of the capital project, first and foremost, that give us the best learning opportunities, and that's going to be surrounding space. What was the second part of the question, Tara?
And how would you approach the long-term planning for it, for the district?
Are we going to talk about state funding again? Because, right, long-term planning has to do with advocating for the right amount of state funding, ensuring that we have the reserves to pull off these capital projects in the future, making sure, again, that we're creating a culture where everyone feels welcome here, and that requires space, people, which goes hand in hand with ensuring we're getting the right amount of funding.
Awesome.
Hopefully, we don't get calls from the governor's office after this, because we've talked a lot about state funding.
Definitely a common theme. Elizabeth?
I think one thing that the staff is doing an outstanding job of, and, you know, the board definitely has a hand in it too, is how the workforce is changing. And staying on that and making sure that our kids are aware of the multitude of jobs that are out there that aren't the typical jobs that kids might think of pursuing and going into. So I think, continuing to provide opportunities for kids to have internships, have partnerships with those in the community, and also, jobs that might not be as prevalent in, the Victor or Rochester area, but maybe up and coming in tech, in AI, in, healthcare, things of that nature, to just really let our kids know these are career choices that exist. These are things and courses that you will need to take and, study up on to be able to enter that type of job, and supporting them. Because I feel that, even in the past 10 years, jobs that we didn't even know existed are now very prevalent and popular, and we need to make sure that the programming that we are providing for our students and the type of education that they're receiving is going to be able to prepare them to fill those jobs.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, I can't help but think history when you asked me this question. Long-term goal. Back in the mid-'90s, I was on the board, and we tried to buy what was the Y building most recently, and it was owned by St. Patrick's Church, and we couldn't pull it off then because, funding just wasn't there. So in terms of a long-term goal, we did it, finally. We got that facility. It's being put to really good use, supporting students that need it, with social emotional tutoring, whatever. It's a space that is unique and is a wonderful asset to the district. So I think space, again, there's other programs, I'm not going to name them, but there's other programs in my mind that need space. Would love to be able to accomplish that in some way. I don't have any solutions yet, but my mind is always thinking about, can we increase our space to meet current and future needs that, possibly we don't even know about yet? And then is our footprint big enough to support, the space that we might need in terms of facilities to support different kinds of programming? So those are the kinds of things I think about, not only space to help with the arts, but all other academic programs, many options that I could think of that would be my long-term goals, and I would hope that eventually we can get there as a group, as a district.
Thank you. Our last question, how do you plan to ensure responsible spending while maintaining program quality? Elizabeth.
I think there's a lot of communication and dialogue that happens between the board, Dr. Terranova, and the business office. I think there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that occurs during crafting a budget and making sure that it is fair for residents and also meets the needs of what the district, is currently faced with. And I think, as we've seen from the presentation, we still have a very affordable tax bracket for our residents, but I understand that there are costs beyond our district that are very concerning for residents. And I think, that continued partnership with our legislative representatives, furthering our partnership in Albany with some of the folks that we've, met within the past year or two, and solidifying those relationships and really conveying these concerns that some folks feel that, when is enough going to be enough? Unfortunately, with rising healthcare costs for our staff, that's something that we cannot control. I think, we're looking at a very complex budget and making sure that we can meet the needs of what our kids will need to be successful in the workforce, if they, join the military, if they enter college, or, vocational training, but also being responsible to residents. And I think really looking at the dollar and cents, it starts with our building administrators talking to teachers, talking to staff about their programs, then meeting with district office officials, and looking at where we can just be very efficient, but not cut corners, and making sure that the kids need what they need to, have a really outstanding education. But looking at our numbers, we are still quite low compared to neighboring communities.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, to be fiscally responsible, you have to identify what your funding strategies are. And as you heard earlier in the presentation, strategies include spending through BOCES so that you generate aid in subsequent years. And there's many opportunities to do that. There's efficiencies that you look for to make sure that you get the best bang for the buck. These are the kinds of strategies you have to continually think about and make sure they're implemented so that we are not overburdening the public. You know, and obviously there's a population that is that operates on a fixed budget, fixed income. So you need to understand that. You need to make sure that the decisions that are being made are not ones that are things that are not needed, but do the appropriate spending to support the district so that our students get the best educational opportunities possible for the amount of money we're spending.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I will say about this board is I think we've been incredibly thoughtful in how we approach budgets and planning. And that is because we're working closely with Dr. Terranova and our Assistant Superintendent of Business. We're having that constant feedback loop with our staff to understand the needs. And I think one of the best things that we've done this year, and really kudos to Christine for just coming in a few months ago, is looking at those efficiencies and what ways can we move money to the places that need it at that moment in that time, and still ensure that we're giving the best programming possible. And that is, you know, clearly it goes back to the statement I made earlier, our public schools are the backbone of the community. What we need to do is ensure that our community can continue to afford to help us with what we're doing. And I know that this board will be thoughtful about that in the future as well, and I'm grateful to the work that Dr. Terranova and Christine have done to enable us to do that.
Thank you. That concludes our final question of the evening, unless there are any final questions from the attendees. Doesn't look like it. Thank you to our candidates for sharing your time and everyone here tonight for your support and engagement. Your involvement makes a real difference for Victor Schools. Don't forget to vote, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tara.